Is April 2nd, 2025. It's 4 p.m. and we are in the Mary Pat Flynn Conference Center. This is the Assembly of Delegates, Cape Cod Regional Government regular meeting. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates will be conducted both in person and via remote means in accordance with the law. A public participation guide and meeting documents are on the county website. The county does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other categories protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information, see the county website, and you'll notice that there's Justina Marzak is responsible for any concerns. She is the ADA non-discrimination coordinator. Her telephone number is 508-375-6646, and her email address is listed on the county website. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams. The link is noted also on the county website. Meeting ID 277-585-911-038, passcode 3, uppercase J, 8, lowercase t, lowercase o, 6, 9, uppercase F, or call 781-469-0191, conference ID 522-240-237#. Calling the meeting to order. If we could have a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving in the armed forces. Now we will pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Okay, we could have a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Delegate Frizzell,
Here.
Delegate Fuller,
Here.
Delegate Gallagher,
Here.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Here.
Delegate Green,
Here.
Delegate Harder,
Here.
Delegate Killian,
Here.
Delegate O'Malley,
Here.
Dean Omen,
Here.
Speaker Potash,
Here.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Here.
Delegate Warner,
Here.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Here.
Madam Speaker, you have a quorum with 14 delegates representing 91.07% of the county's population.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We're going to skip over number 4 and go to number 5, adoption of the order of business. Deputy Speaker.
I move that we adopt the calendar of business.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Dean Omen.
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes. Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, that motion is adopted with 14 delegates representing 91.07% of the county's population.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Number 6, communications from members of the public and public officials. Are there any members of the public? So I see that there's members of the public in the audience. Would you like to speak? Anybody? Or all of you? Who's going to raise their hand first? You have to raise your hand and move up to the mic if you would.
I think that's.
Yeah, we do.
And then we're going to get to the folks online. Welcome, sir. If you could just state your name when you get up to the microphone, or sit down to the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm mic on.
thank you.
Can you hear this? Okay. I'm David Kaplan, Executive Director from Forward. We build housing for people on the autism spectrum. The housing is affordable, supportive, accessible. My hesitation in coming up was because I wasn't sure the people who were here for the housing issue were speaking now. So, but this is the time.
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So I know the county is concerned about the need for affordable housing and how affordable housing gets developed here. I can say for sure there is a need. For us, the county had funded a housing needs study that we did 4 years ago, which showed definitively that affordable housing was needed for the disability populations that we serve. I think in the interim, that's really only gotten worse. There's a lot of data. We hear from the Department of Developmental Services, who is the state's agency provider for this population, that they are in constant need of decent housing for this population. We know from our own experience, we're constantly getting calls from parents desperate to find a place for their kids. And by kids, sometimes I'm talking about 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. The parents are having difficulty with their housing. People need some place to go. So for us, we built 2 group homes 4 years ago, opened in 2020. We're now working on 8 one-bedroom apartments for people who can live a little bit more independently than those in the group homes. And I'm happy to say that the county has supported the funding for the buildings that we're developing now with $325,000 in an ARPA grant, which pretty much put us over the top on our funding for that project. We're pleased to say that 14 community preservation committees on the Cape have voted to support the project. A couple of those are awaiting final approval at town meeting in this month in May. But I think it shows that the Cape from Bourne to Provincetown, both the need and the support that the Cape has been giving. And as the county addresses this, I think we would just like to say that we think there are ways the county could probably help us and others in developing affordable housing, and not just through grants or direct payments for construction, although we like those, we're not going to turn those down for sure. But there are certain key points, I think, in the process. Early pre-development, where we really could use a lot of help. It's premature on getting actual construction grants. So there we do need some financial help. But even more, I think we need technical help and process help. This is all just very, very complicated, very slow process, lots of government intervention, and it's difficult. We're a relatively small nonprofit, but I think even for the much bigger nonprofits building in this area, it's really a difficult proposition. And so it's hard to get through the pre-development. Pre-development's very expensive. Pre-development for these 8 apartments, and by pre-development, I mean design, engineering, architecture, not the bricks and mortar, is over $1 million for 8 apartments. And it's tough to get through that. It's tough to get financing for that. And it's tough to get technical support during that process. Takes years, takes money. So I think it's an area where the county, if it could provide more services across the Cape to developers in our position, I think that would be a key area that would really help us. The other point where it's a little problematic for us is right where we are now, between having achieved our financing goals and getting to the financial closing and having the cash flow to start construction. Because this is all basically done on a requisition basis, so we have to pay the contractors first and then seek reimbursement from one or many of the funders. So that's where there's a slight there's a slight difficulty for us getting through that early process. So I just wanted to mention that it would be another case where the county would be in a position to really help out. So we think there's certainly the need for all kinds of assistance from our own experience, having worked with all these CPCs now and really knowing the population pretty well, the needs pretty well, that some help from the county, I think, could benefit the entire Cape. And so that's, I think, pretty much our pitch today, is there's a clear
That's good.
need.
Could you just vote out your 5 minutes, so if you could
Oh, so, okay, so I'll wind it.
conclude.
So, sorry. So I have a lot to say about the subject, but, so I think it's a clear need. We need it. The housing is needed. The technical help is needed, and we want to keep building, but it's a challenge and we need help. So.
Thank you
thanks.
very much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. I think it might even be 3 minutes, but, here we go. Yes, sir. And anybody online, if you could raise your hands so that we know you're out there and you'd like to speak, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. So it's 3 minutes a person, if I'm not mistaken. Go ahead, sir. Please just state your name.
Sure. My name is Bob Samalak. I'm the co-chair of the Housing Trust in Dennis. First off, here because the regional services that is on for discussion, shared regional services, we feel in Dennis that we have been able to take advantage of that. It's been very helpful. It's certainly very professional and knowledgeable, and that has helped us. For example, specifically, we have a lot of properties that should be on our subsidized housing inventory, and there are issues with the deeds, and they've been very helpful along the way with that. I would also, though, echo Mr. Kaplan's comments that the technical support that trusts like ours trying to build housing could use is extreme. This stuff is not easy, and there's twists and turns in it, and you have amateurs like me who care and are fascinated to learn all this, but to execute it is very, very difficult. And so some entity like that can help us continue do that and do it even at a next level would really impact the housing issues here. We need help. So the other thing I would say is last week I was at the Cape Cod Commission where they were talking about their regional housing strategy. We're about to update our housing production plan in Dennis, as are many other towns that already have some of this. We see that the Seasonal Communities has a council that's looking at how to issues around housing here. I think some effort to coordinate some of the planning is, as you look at your strategic plan across these entities, could be extremely helpful, because we need a little less planning and a little more executing. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well said. All right. Anybody else in the room? Nope. CA online. Please state your name and speak. CA, you're still muted. You're number 1 on the list. Last name Armstrong. Yeah, please go ahead. You're still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to put my camera on, but it won't work. I'm here today just to speak
If you could just say your full, state your name, your full name, please, for the record,
Yes.
and town.
Sherian Armstrong, Harwich, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I just wanted to speak to you today in my role as the chairperson of the Greater Cape and Islands Mass Educator Action Network, because I have an opportunity to speak regularly with educators from Plymouth to Provincetown, as well as the Vineyard and Nantucket. And among the many social issues that we discuss as educators, childcare, food insecurity, mental health, the most common topic that we have here on Cape Cod is housing. The housing affects successful applicants. We try to hire for educator openings who, after being offered positions, find they're unable to relocate because of the lack of housing. The same housing crisis is directly related to the declining enrollment in schools on Cape Cod because young families cannot afford to live here. I can speak to my own personal experience when my children, who were raised here on the Cape, my daughter returned at age 40 to a wonderful job that she accepted here with a salary of close to $100,000 a year. But after 1 year in the position, she and her husband were unable to find any housing that they could afford, nor could they find any rental that they could afford. They were able to pay up to $3,000 a month for a rental, but they were not able to find anything in a condition in which that type of money would have been amenable to them paying for the condition of the rental that they were able to find. I think one of the things that's most important for us to remember is that it's becoming increasingly difficult for our middle-aged earners on the Cape to find housing. But most importantly, I can tell you that every day I am confronted with issues from my students who have trouble with housing. We have students that come to school disheveled, students that come to school tired, and one of the issues that they have is because they're either camping in campgrounds during the fall and spring months, or over the winter they're couch surfing at other people's homes because they don't have affordable housing. Last year, it was very challenging to me in my role to find a student who would have been the first in her family to attend college, and she was unable to do so. Her dream of becoming a nurse had to wait. She was another adult in her household that would be able to work full-time upon graduation, and that was more important to her family to have that income because they were living a family of 4 in a 1-bedroom home. And so she had to put off her dream of going to college despite having a complete scholarship. And I just want to tell you too, my own colleagues here who lose their housing, they're in the
Just so you know,
rental
ma'am, another 30 seconds, so
Okay.
just want to warn you.
Yes, I just want you to know that we have many people here that are in our middle class earners that contribute to the Cape, the vitality of the Cape, and they're not able to find housing here on Cape Cod. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number one, next is MG. If you could unmute yourself and go ahead and talk to us. Michael Galasso, welcome. You're still muted, sir. You're completely muted. Can't hear a word. Still muted. Push the button to unmute. Whatever it takes.
On top, yeah.
On top, maybe? *6. Anything on the computer to unmute yourself, sir? Yeah, still, I wish we were lip readers, but not capable. How about we'll come back to you? We now see BR. So, Mr. Galasso, I'm going to come back to you. Do your best to unmute. Do whatever it takes. Even if you have to break in during BR, we'll excuse you. BR, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Bobby
And your-
Richards. I'm
And your
the director of the
town too. Yep.
I'm the director of the Falmouth Housing Authority. And I just wanted to share a need that the Housing Authority has in case there's any opportunity from any of the unspent funding. We have 163 units of federal housing that were allocated the largest emergency repair grant issued by HUD ever to any housing authority in Massachusetts. We received about $3.4 million a few years ago to address a failed copper piping issue that affected our Harborview and our Tatticatt building. I believe that we received notification of the funding. It was either in December or January of 2020. And within 30 to 45 days, COVID was declared. And immediately the cost of materials and labor doubled, resulting in our inability to service both buildings. We actually only had enough with overruns to finish out of 163 units to only address one building for a total of 80 units. We are still trying to find funding, and we are really asking that if there's any money left over that you could consider looking at our proposal. I'm more than happy to send information. I have one building that needs significant repairs. The building is over 40 years old, and it houses 83 units of housing for elderly and disabled clients. And without this funding, we really are going to have start to have a discussion whether or not there's a disposition issue. We don't want to lose that number of units in our community, and we certainly don't want to lose them from the counts for affordable housing on the Cape. So we are asking for you to please assist us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for attending. Michael Galasso. Any luck? Oh, well, that's unfortunate, sir. Feel free to email our clerk with whatever concerns you had or whatever you wanted to say. And we will make sure that gets distributed. Okay, go to the county website and look for the Assembly of Delegates and email the clerk. That's the best I could do for now. Is there anybody else either here or online from the public that wants to talk about anything at all? Seeing none, we are going to move on, and we're going to go to communications from the regional commissioners, as administrator and our directors. Welcome, Mr. Dutton, County Administrator.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and delegates. I'm happy to be here. I've got just a few things on my list that I wanted to bring to your attention. One, actually the subject of affordable housing, I know it's going to come up later in your agenda, but I do want to impress upon the delegates that we are trying to put together a continuation of the regional housing approach that has been so successful over the last couple of years. Had a conversation actually today with the consultant that is spearheading that. So I am hoping to get an RFP out and coordinate with the towns an intermunicipal agreement, which obviously will come back to you. So we are slowly making progress on that front, and I'm optimistic that we can continue that particular piece, that particular part of the overall housing strategy. So that's a piece of good news. Let's see, the county commissioners at their last meeting heard a presentation of the draft feasibility study for the regional composting facility, tentatively planned for Joint Base Cape Cod. And I think there was some positive review of that, some positive comments about that. So we will be taking that up and working on that over the next probably 2 years worth of permitting process. That's about the timeline for permitting when you're permitting on a piece of property that is owned by one entity and controlled by another entity, which is controlled by another entity, and so on and so on and so on. So that will be a process, but we will begin that process and spearhead that. I think I'm not sure if your assembly clerk has the letter that I had drafted on behalf of the commissioners and hopefully the Assembly of Delegates. I don't think it's in your packet. Oh, they do have it. Oh, very good. So I drafted a letter pursuant to the commissioners' request, looking for $500 million out of the environmental bond bill to be allocated to the state revolving fund, the Clean Water Trust, which in turn should be enough to continue to fund the progress that the Cape has made, the various towns on the Cape have made regarding mostly sewer installations. So that is there. The other piece of that was a reminder that eventually in the years out on the environmental bond bill, it would be helpful to allocate money for the freshwater initiative, which I think this body heard a little bit of from the executive director at the Cape Cod Commission. So I wanted to make sure that we added that as well, because when it comes to health of the freshwater ponds, that is often either an indication or a reflection of the cleanliness of our drinking water. And that's obviously what a lot of this is all about. So that's the environmental bond bill letter. We do have some, the commissioners also heard from Brian Baumgartel, the Mass Tech director, on a number of different initiatives going on. As you know, they've secured a new building on their site on the base. It's not a permanent building because there is no such thing as a permanent building on the base. But that new building will have a ribbon cutting ceremony sometime in May. I know, to which you will all be invited. Obviously, we're narrowing down the potential date there. So as soon as that's settled, you'll get an invitation for that. MasTech also is contemplating a name change, something that reflects the work that they actually do, other than a bunch of an abbreviated. What is that when you have? Well, anyway, an acronym, right? Thank you. So that we'll be talking a little bit more about that. The commissioners were a little confused about what exactly was changing names. So we'll sort that out, get that back in front of them. But I do want to remind you to look for a date. We're tentatively planning a date in May. I'm just not exactly sure what that date will be yet. So, and they also, just another piece of that, and I know this question has come up a number of times. They are upgrading their lab at MasTech. What they will be installing there will not be the same things that the county lab just down the hill here does. So that is in the works too. And I know various committees. I think now most recently the Finance Committee of the Assembly is looking for a number of pieces of information from us internally. We are working on that. We want to make sure you get absolutely everything you need to make budget decisions. And so that is actually one thing I wanted to really highlight. You know, if there is something you need, we will give it to you. I do ask a little patience because some of the items that have been requested require manual research, especially when you go back a number of years. So just ask for a little patience. I believe if we've got a good chunk of it today, and I think by Friday, I'm told we'll be able to get the rest over to you. But I do ask for just a little bit of patience as we collect that information and put it into a format that is understandable and readable. So that I believe is all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any? No? Oh, okay. Well, that was easy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either
thank you.
nobody understood a word I said.
I guess I do have a very quick question. I appreciate the letter. We all have it. We could probably even vote on it today. So it hasn't been sent out yet.
No.
Okay. And thank you for including the assembly as signatures, if that's the word.
I do think, as you point out, I think that's increasingly important as we tackle, sort of big regional issues. I think that it is important to make sure that we get to a point where we can speak as one county, especially in relation to state or federal issues. Got my fingers crossed, and I cross my fingers and toes every day that I don't hear about a federal funding cut. If and when that happens, I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of advocating for either a replenishment of whatever gets cut, or I'll always argue for actually more than got cut, but I want to make sure that we're all on that same page. So this is sort of a corollary of that. I want to make sure that on important issues like this, we can have a lot of disagreements about a lot of things, but on important issues such as clean water funding and making sure that Clean Water Trust is well funded and is sustainable because it works, number one. But I want to make sure that the state recognizes that we have one very clear vocal voice there. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay, I guess you're dismissed.
Thank you.
Yeah. You might want to stay for the next portion though, somewhere in the room. So let's see. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the Barnstable County Code of Conduct, right? And so this is before us because the regional commissioners recently reaffirmed the Code of Conduct. And we have never signed this as a body before. And I wanted to just have, we're not going to vote on this today at all. We're just going to have a discussion about whether or not we might want to adopt this one or not, whether we might want to truncate it at all or, adopt our own at some point that we could work on. So who would like to go first in a discussion on this? Delegate Frizel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. First, so I'm assuming we don't have one and never had one. So what is this code of, who does this code apply to that is currently in existence?
Well, the one that's currently in existence is in your packet. You may not have had the chance to look at it. However, it says right on its face that it applies to elected and appointed members of the Barnstable County Regional Government. I will tell you that appointed members would include, my understanding of that is the finance director, the Cape Cod Commission executive director, and the administrator. They are appointed. And I guess some committee members, but we are not appointed. We are elected officials. It says it applies to us,
right.
But does it?
Well, it says it.
We've never signed it, so it says it.
So I was
Yes, but it's just a piece of paper stating something. So this all came about back in 2017 for various reasons. If you ever want to go back and listen to, we're not going to talk about it now in any way, shape, or form, but it did come out in 2017, and it's been reaffirmed by only the commissioners. We've never signed it. It can't be handed to us as that we're responsible for it. So we might want to be. It might be a good look, and that's why we're talking about it. Who wants to go next? Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm all in favor of us signing this. I, to be honest, always assumed that we were following this. So I think it's only correct that we should be following some sort of code of conduct. And as far as I can tell, this is pretty boilerplate and not forcing us to do anything against what we believe in personally. Thank you.
A lot of it's in the charter anyway, and whether we're following it or not doesn't mean we've adopted it, but we could. Delegate Frederickson from Barnstable, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, as you know.
Here we go. Yep. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all from a distance. I think this is pretty straightforward, and we need to have consistency with our other parts of government, and I can't see any reason why we shouldn't vote on it. And we should do it every year because we all should be reminded that we are watched closely with what we do. And to have a standard set is great for everybody to follow. And we have something to look to show that we're responsible and accountable for our actions. I'm all in favor of it.
No, that's great. And just so you know, even if we really wanted to, and even if you begged, we could not vote on it tonight because it's not in after the assembly convenes on the list, but that does not mean we couldn't vote on it at another meeting if it's in that spot. Delegate Green, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. I'm not in favor of signing on to it or voting to adopt it. We're elected officials. We're governed by the rules as elected officials, and furthermore, we've all gone through an ethics training course, and that training course is more stringent than actually our role because it's the same training course that the state senators and state representatives go through, and we all have certificates about that. We all know what our roles are. We all know what we're elected to do, what our rights are, and I'm not in favor of this, which I think could be interpreted different ways by different people. I think we're all responsible adults who are entrusted to represent our towns in the county, and that's good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate O'Malley, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think that we are covered by this regardless. That's pretty clear. And so from that standpoint, whether we have other training or not is I don't think relevant. I think it's useful for us to be endorsing it with the board. That has the sense of this represents county government working together to create a unified set, and I don't think we should do anything to change it. There should be one standard set of code of conduct that applies to all of us.
Thank you. Delegate Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I haven't had a chance to look this over in detail. It seems to be pretty straightforward. I have no objections to approving what I see so far. You repeated a couple of times that we haven't signed it. It does say at the top that it was adopted in 2017, which was before my time. Do we know what does that mean, that it was adopted? Was it approved by the commissioner?
That's right. It was approved by the commissioner.
And not by the assembly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody online want to opine? No? Anybody else in the room? Seeing none? Okay, so we had our discussion and Delegate Green, go ahead.
Thank you. One more point, and that point is for the delegates to consider your privacy and also your rights. And if anything is removing the rights that we have as delegates, and I believe that there is language there that could be interpreted that way, I think that's really very important for the delegates to consider. And that's the way I'm looking at this and thinking that every delegate should question that and really seriously consider that aspect. Thank you.
Okay, so in the event that we put this on for a vote next time, you'll be able to voice your opinion and everybody will be more informed next time. In the event we put it on for a vote, look for it in your packets so that you can make an educated decision if we vote for it next meeting. Okay, so that's that about that. Next topic is discussion on the regional housing strategy recommendations and shared housing services program. This is essentially a continuation of last time. And we just want to be able to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. We don't have to do one question at a time. I don't think that went over well. And I will allow you to, to make your comments, and you can even have another turn after other people have gone, but who wants to go first? Don't be shy. I know you all want to talk about housing. So Delegate Warner.
Jump right in. I think that one of the most rewarding things about this is that after many years, there are now conclusions being drafted as a result of studies and of different groups looking at programs that might benefit a wide variety of people in the communities. I think that the community itself needs to have more education about what's going on in that regard, because everybody keeps saying, or everyone seems to feel that the county is just studying. And although I have tried to explain to them that that's not, that we're at a point now where we can actually start to begin to make recommendations and movements, their information is not, they don't have that information. And because there are people in the community who are really willing to get involved and do something, but they have the sense that they don't know what to do and or how they might become involved to help it move along. I also think that there have been some issues that, as a part of the housing, that have suggested, for example, that developers, if they get a plot of land that they can develop so many properties on, that they must have so many that are available for affordable living. And there have been a couple that have been brought to my attention that did not have to comply with that. and somehow they got by it. And that also seems to be information that the community is receiving, saying, you know, people say they want to do it, but why aren't there, how could that be bypassed? And I don't have that answer because they're all in different communities, but I think that at this point, we need to collectively kind of put this together in a way that some of the other programs were done, where we're able to look at it as a whole and say, you know, on this whole, with all these different housing initiatives and communities that are trying to develop new things for providing housing, that we take a look at it and say, okay, so which ones do we, you know, which ones are the low hanging fruit that we can actually start moving and see some initiatives, so that the folks get to see that there is movement towards that. I think that we're at that place, but I think we still don't have something that we can just say, okay, these are the ones we've identified, and we're going to move forward with that, or we're going to have a meeting and allow people to, you know, weigh in on those that might be more important than others. We're at a point where we can't wait anymore. And I have been very clear by the people that I've been speaking to that they're a little frustrated, because, like I said, they say, well, how many more plans are we going to have? How many more studies are we going to have? How many? You know, I only know of those that since I've been on the assembly, but they point out others to me. So I think it would be great if we could come up with some kind of document that says, okay, these have all been done. And this is where we're looking at potentially starting to try to execute. And do you have anything to weigh in on that as far as that? I really believe that we are at that point and we can't wait any longer. I mean, we are so many of our workers, so many of our families, so many of our young people simply do not have the opportunity to even get a chance to look at what they might be able to afford here, because there's nothing. And if you look at the amount of development that has occurred, what's it, 82% or 84% that is already developed. So there's not a lot of new stuff that can be developed. So we really need to start looking at those alternative things, many of which have been identified, some at the Cape Cod Commission's group this year and the year before, and others that other housing programs have started to look at as a reasonable way to go after it. And as a regional body, I would hope that there might be a way for us to help coordinate that information, so that we can in fact be at the front of moving it forward and start to get the rest of the communities involved, no matter what township they live in, and get them really excited about seeing, oh, look, that happened. I mean, it doesn't have to be big to begin with, but it needs to be moving, and it's not moving. It's been stalled for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I'm going to echo a lot of the sentiments that the delegate from Yarmouth brought up a minute ago. My question to all of you today is, why do we come here every 2 weeks? Is it just to sit in front of this beautiful seal here? We hear a lot these days about the need to defend institutions of government. Even at the regional level, it seems like the conversation always gravitates towards an existential discussion of our role as a legislative body. And yet, when these issues come in front of the voters, time after time, the response is often sheer indifference. How is it possible that the public seems so disengaged from things that we here consider to be so fundamental? Government's job is simple. It's to protect, expand, and defend the American dream. And yet, when it comes to one of the most foundational promises of that American dream, homeownership, we failed. At every level, local, regional, state, and federal. We've priced entire generations of Cape Codders out of the communities that they grew up in and love. Is it any wonder why people don't feel compelled to defend institutions that no longer deliver for them? So why can't we deliver? Because we silo ourselves into our own little interest groups, and we cling to the idea that there's a perfect solution out there. And we're terrified of moving forward and making a mistake. We create convoluted processes and convince ourselves that that's just how government's supposed to work. We throw money into a consultant industrial complex, hoping that they'll conjure up some magic answer. But there is no perfect solution. And if we spend all our time waiting for one, we'll accomplish nothing. So today, and for every day going after, I challenge my colleagues. I challenge us all to stop living in fear of imperfection. I challenge us to demand action. And I challenge us to boldly use the power that the voters have entrusted us with. Are we going to solve the housing crisis overnight? Of course not. But if we act, not study, not act to study, and not act to fund a study, but truly act, I bet we could put 20 families in homes by the end of the summer. That's 20 families achieving the American dream that they otherwise couldn't. And if we keep at it, 20 becomes 200, 200 becomes 2,000. It's going to be a gradual process for sure. No one's denying that. But if we wait for the day that we can house 2,000 people all at once before we do anything, we'll be sitting here years from now with nothing to show for it. Years ago, we spent $1 million on a study that told us that housing is a problem on the Cape. In the coming months, we better spend a hell of a lot more on actually putting people into homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for that, those comments, Mr. Gessen. I think what I'd like to do is really define what our role will be in this. And I would really welcome the opportunity to hear from the public. It's something everyone has an opinion on. I myself have been in developing real estate for a couple of decades. I've built a lot of starter homes in my town. And I can tell you firsthand, a lot of these problems we've done to ourselves. And I'm glad that gentleman who spoke earlier brought up the process, that it's very complicated and arduous, and it has only gotten worse. And it has only driven up the costs of real estate, made it much more difficult to develop. So those are things we can take a look at. Perhaps we can help to streamline that process, to make it a little easier and less expensive, because the more difficult the process is, the less money goes into building and more into the bureaucracy. And I think those are matters that we can certainly openly discuss and perhaps help with. I'm not sure beyond that what we'll be able to do. I mean, obviously we don't have a lot of money to give out to help people to develop things, but I would look forward to that. But I really think we should kind of define what it is we want to accomplish. And as I said, the best thing would be hopefully get the word out to people and get some input from the community and what they're looking for and what we can help them with. Because it certainly is an issue. It's touched me, but for sure, my son and his family had to leave Cape Cod 10 years ago because they couldn't afford to live here. So I understand that is the issue, but I also understand that it's a small place. We don't have the ability to expand like a lot of places in the country do. They can go different directions and go that way. We don't have that opportunity. So it really is challenging, and it's something we want to do to keep Cape Cod the way we've all enjoyed it. And we don't want to turn it into something that it's not. We don't want to turn it into Quincy or Weymouth. We want to be able to develop a place that we enjoy and the people who live here enjoy. And I look forward to this discussion because it clearly will affect all of us for many years to come.
Thank you. Delegate Frederickson, please go ahead.
Good evening again, and thanks for bringing this issue up. What I've done since the last meeting is try to get a little bit more educated on what we're talking about. I'm still not sure what the assembly's role in this is. However, we're discussing it. So what I did do is I spoke with a town manager, the town planner, the town council president, the Cape Cod Commission representative about what do they feel? What do they feel in my community? What's the directive from them, or what are they looking for from us? And what we got was kind of interesting, kind of what I was thinking. That the first thing they do like is that shared services concept of doing what they're doing. So that's kind of a win that we should probably look at deeper. Probably something we have to fit within the county budget for next year a little bit better. But the most striking thing is that I was so impressed with what they're actually doing in the town of Barnstable, their reasoning for what they're doing. You know, they put in over 1,000 units in the last 6 or 7 years. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of that. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of housing, and we're still moving forward. The other thing that's come to light is that studies are interesting because these documents are going to live for a long time. We're going to refer to them, and a lot of information gets put into them. And complicating this is we got $4 billion that the state put aside for housing. Government is getting into the housing business, which I don't believe that that's what it was supposed to do, but yet here we are. There's a lot to be done. So $4 billion is being looked at by everybody. It's being advocated by so many people, not necessarily people whose interests are really in what I hear from the commissioners. They're really putting people in houses. They're looking at their own businesses, getting in there, lobbying for money, lobbying for materials, lobbying for contracts, lobbying for rental space to build as many as they can, because there's a lot of money out there. So after looking at everything, I think we need careful execution of what we do with this plan. If anything, this is merely a plan that we move forward to the towns and let them decide. I'm going to guess that in everybody else's town, they're doing a darn good job of addressing the issue, and there's only so much they can do. And if you look at some of these recommendations, they're really kind of interesting. Change zoning. Okay, that's been a mantra for quite a while, and it's already happening in the state. That's going to change the zoning of people that put in place long ago. Do I agree with some of the concepts or whatever it is? Streamlining permitting, that's good stuff. Now, developing a community land trust and housing land bank. That sounds like it's increasing taxes on somebody, because somebody's going to have to pay for that. Providing financial incentives to preserve year-round. That's a great idea. Finance housing affordable to 80 to 120%. That's a banking issue, how they can do that. Providing low, no-cost loans for ADUs. That's a tough nut to crack. Dedicate municipal tax receipts towards housing and infrastructure. I think there's already some of that already taking place. Develop a regional local government investment pool. I'm not sure what that means. I'd have to dig deeper into it. Establishing a permanent retail housing services officer. That's something I think they talk about. I guess they're assuming that's the shared services position, which sounds interesting. But again, we have to move that into our budget if it's going to come through us. And develop a regional capital plan. We don't have a lot of money to work with. That's one of our primary focuses, to manage the finances of our county government. And I don't think we have a whole lot. And then here's the one that was really interesting. Explore housing potential on Joint Base Cape Cod. You have 18,000 acres, give or take, out there. We can't let the military who are on the military base shoot a bullet out there pretty much. But yet we want to put more housing out there because of because it's a big space that the state owns a big portion of it. So these are all questions, but it really comes back to what I said. I don't know what our role is, how we can support some of these initiatives, if that's our role. But whatever it is, we need careful execution, that we're not doing too much too soon, but yet take action on some of these. And that's up to the local governments to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lillian Green, I think you were next. Delegate Green from Wellfleet, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a critical issue. It is super important. I've said in the assembly meetings before, I mean, from A to Z, this is a crucial issue. It's really dire on the Outer Cape as well. And I mean, I used one of my primary care doctor appointments to ask my primary care what she felt was the biggest issue when we had the ARPA money. And she said it out of all the issues in the medical field, she said housing for doctors. I mean, doctors can't even find appropriate housing, especially people coming out of medical school that we might want to attract. And we need more primary care physicians on the Cape. We have local workers who have great jobs, like people working in postal service and other like town people working in the towns who can't afford to be here. They can't afford to live here. We hear this all the time, or they're just and they can't get the assistance because their salaries are just a little bit over what the cutoffs are. I mean, there's so many issues, and it is very complicated. But I will tell you that one wrinkle. I did want to say that the state is developing regulations, and we should be on top of this, and we should be following it. And I don't know how we should. Perhaps we need direction from the Cape Cod Commission, as far as I'm sure they're following that, so that we know when they're having virtual meetings that we can tune in on, when they have public comment periods. I mean, we should all be apprised of that, and our community should be as well, I think. And so that is one thing. However, on the Outer Cape, and the seashore towns, the 6 seashore towns on the Outer Cape are different. I mean, they just are. And Eastham, Wellfleet, and Truro right now have a particular issue that is confounding, actually, and it's a real challenge. And it wasn't taken into account when the ADUs were designated. Now, gratefully, there's a Seashore Advisory Commission, and I am the Wellfleet representative. At the last meeting, I made the recommendation that the towns that have this issue because meet and there is a subcommittee of the Seashore Advisory Commission so that we could hopefully work things out. What's happened is the superintendent of the National Seashore has said that there's a conflict. So we have a state law that is enforcing ADUs, but there's over 250 ADUs within the bounds of the Seashore and Wellfleet. So it is a particular issue, and we did meet, and hopefully there's a path forward, but I'm sure that there's particular issues in each one of the towns. But I mean, I say this over and over again, that, our towns have very little real estate, shall we say. And then when we have over 60% of, let's say, Wellfleet is national park, my vote is not very big as a result, but I mean, there's a lot of other issues as a result. But we are a feather in the cap of Cape Cod, and we are a draw. The seashore towns and the Cape Cod National Seashore is a draw for everyone here on the Cape. So I mean, it's a complex issue. I've heard about the natural resources have to be not in conflict with the build out either. And we all have well water down here in Wellfleet, or most everybody, almost 100% of people have well water. So that's another issue. And there's one other thing I did want to bring up, just for everyone, in case you don't know. There is a seasonal communities designation for 14 out of 15 of the Cape towns, the towns in Barnstable County. And I don't recall which town, I think it may be Sandwich, is not a part of this designation. But there are certain build outs that are allowable under this designation, and there's others that would be potential with certain zoning changes within your towns. So, I mean, that may be a help as well. So I know this has been a bunch of random thoughts, but hopefully it's been helpful too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Harder from Harwich, Delegate Harder, please go ahead, and then we'll, Michaela Wyman Colombo from Mashpee, you'll be next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have been screaming about housing for 150 years, so I could talk about this for 150 hours. But just in terms of what everyone's saying, I think it's wonderful. Because really everybody's saying the same thing, which is we understand that housing is a crisis, and we understand there are things the county could do in order to alleviate this crisis. We don't know exactly what that is today, but we certainly know that there is so much information out there, and there are so many new rules and regulations out there, and nobody's quite sure the best way to attack things. Delegate Green pointed out towns are different. And what works in Barnstable is not going to work in P-Town. And what we do know so far that has been a huge success is the regional, sorry, the exact wording is left my out, the regional program that we've been running under ARPA for the past year. The towns are very excited about that. And I think if we use that to see why is that working, why do the towns like it, and figure out how to move from there to see what else we can do. Lots of people mention zoning. There are a million different zoning things that the Cape Cod Commission suggested at the end of their fabulous study, which would work for some towns, not for others, but we can explain. If we have a regional center, somebody can come to us and say, what's inclusionary zoning? And we can tell them and have a forum and have a, a draft resolution on how to get it to town hall. Eventually, we could also do something like, we talk about buy down programs or helping people to keep their apartments or homes as affordable. So we give them money. We could try to figure out a way to do a loan thing, sort of like Aqua Fund. I mean, we do that for wastewater. We might be able to figure out something like that we can do for housing. Nobody wants to take over housing, believe me, and you can't. There are too many entities, and there's too many. You've got the capital A affordable, which comes with its own problems and opportunities. Really, I happen to think on the Cape, the biggest problem is attainable, as Delegate Gillian said, where, and as Delegate Green said, we can't afford to lose the people who can't afford to live here. And they make just a smidge over 80%. There's no help for them. And I think we can use this regional shared program to create an entity where we can help people get their questions answered. We can help highlight what's working. Provincetown has some wonderful things they're doing. Don't think they'd work in Barnstable. Probably wouldn't work in Sandwich, but might work in Dennis. We don't know. But to highlight what is working, to highlight the needs, to have one place for people in housing to share or to question, and it would just, I think it would really help focus the county on this problem and give us an opportunity to help the towns. A lot of the towns are doing great work. Some of the towns are really hurt because there's this state law that you have to have 10% of your year-round housing has to be capital A affordable. Well, there are towns that A, can't afford it, or B, don't have the land. So maybe regionally we could come up with a way to address that. I don't know. Now we're getting into my fantasy of housing. But I think that every single person who spoke today is sort of on the same page. It's that we know there's a crisis and we know the county has abilities to help. We just don't know exactly how today. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Wyman Colombo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Delegate Harder said a lot of the things that I had wanted to say. I think the regional housing program really makes good sense. It's a good resource. We need to find a way to keep that going. I think that's critically important. I also want to say again, I feel a missing piece from
Delegate Wyman Colombo, unfortunately you froze. There's a train going by. I don't know if that derailed you or not, but I'm gonna go to a different delegate. Oh, no, wait, you're back. Oh, good. You had frozen. You had been frozen.
Oh,
try turning off your video if it happens again.
I don't know. Okay. I don't know when I was frozen. So I guess I need to say, I feel like the missing piece from this discussion has been the intersection of providing housing and protecting our environment and our water. If we lose the water quality, we lose our drinking water, we lose everything. So I think we need to be looking at redevelopment. We need to be looking at deed restrictions that ensure the housing we provide is protected. And I don't know if I just was lost again, but I don't think we can discuss this without discussing the environment as well. There's an intersection that we need to consider. I think that's critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me look in the room. I'm looking. Oh, yes, Delegate Gallagher.
I'll speak. Thank you very much. We all know this is one of the most crucial issues we face, and we've been talking about it for a long time. And COVID certainly complicated the efforts that are being made. Most of the responsibility for dealing with housing happens at the town level in the private sector. It's a supply-demand issue. You can increase supply to ease pressure on prices. You could try to increase wages to make housing more affordable. That would be another direction. One important point that I would like to make, though, is that a lot has been done, a lot is being done. These things take time. I don't have an overview of all the towns on the Cape, but I'm quite familiar with what's happening in Eastham, the neighboring towns, Orleans, Wellfleet. I could go on at length about the practical obstacles there have been to all of the very worthy projects that are underway. In Eastham, I know we need to have wastewater before we can have denser housing. That's going to take a long time. We don't have a wastewater treatment plant. All of these things are complicated, but I think that people of goodwill are working very hard on this issue. I know that from the outside, perhaps from the public's point of view, these things are taking too long, but they take a long time because we want to approach them responsibly. It's not the role of the county government to act as a housing developer. We're not going to go out and build projects. That happens at the town level. It's also not our job to tell the developers what they can and can't do, but we want to ensure that everybody acts responsibly and that our environment is protected, for example. A lot of compromises will be made along the way. These things just take time. I think a lot of good work is being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything about this? Yes, please, Delegate Frizel from Brewster. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a big problem. You all know this. I mean, the state has a lot more resources than we do. They haven't solved it. And they've been working on it for a long time. They have a lot more leverage than we do. They've tried using that leverage in the MBTA Communities Act. And what they get out of that is litigation. It's a really big problem. And I'm not sure what resources we as a region can provide. But maybe rather than trying to think of this in its global big terms, we could, I think we have a standing housing committee. Maybe a smaller group could look at what steps we might be able to take as a regional government here in the short term. I mean, following up somewhat with what this deputy speaker said, let's look a little smaller maybe at this. What contributions we could do? What is our role? I think that's what we're all kind of struggling with. What is our role? We know that this is mostly in the hands of local government. The state has found that out. It's zoning, and they aren't doing anything about the zoning. They've been trying to do something about the zoning, can't get it through the legislature. So if there's some steps we can take and we have a role in some way to make some contribution, we hear that our shared service program is a success. That's one contribution. Maybe we can build on that in some way, but I'm not going to do it with 15 people sitting around at a meeting like this. I think it might be helpful if our subcommittee on housing spend some time. We have enough plans with that regional plan from the Cape Cod Commission's an excellent plan. That's a place to look and see what within there we may have some role we could play as a contribution. We're not going to solve this problem, but maybe we're part of a small piece of a solution to this problem at least. So I would suggest we start there. Thank you.
Yep. Does anybody else want to say anything? I agree with Delegate Frizel 100%. And we've already talked about having a committee meeting on this, and it's going to be in the next fortnight, perhaps. So keep an eye out for that. We'll let everybody know at least 10 days in advance so that we can discuss at a committee how we could expound on the shared services program, at least just that, and how we can make a difference and sort of, dovetail from that, maybe talking to the county administrator about it and the board. If we can just find something that we might be able to contribute, in my opinion, it would be worthwhile. Does anybody disagree with that? I'd like to know if anyone disagrees with that. No? Okay. Elizabeth, I'm going to guess you don't disagree with that.
Shockingly, no, I don't disagree. But I would like to ask that because this is a complex issue, there are people who support, like me, throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And then there are people who don't. And I'd really like to make sure that we get the people who don't to speak up, because a lot of times I find when I'm at housing meetings, the people who are trying to accomplish anything in the world of housing are all together and we're all on the same page. And that doesn't always help, because you need dissenting voices to be able to focus your opinion more. And it also helps bring out misconceptions. And so I think we need to be aware that we don't want just cheerleaders for something. And in terms of the bond bill, as someone who campaigned strenuously for it, it's quite disappointing. It's a lot of money for tax cuts, for things that will be very helpful in other parts of the state, but not so much here, for big developments, for things like that that just aren't applicable. But there are things that can be helpful that we can use and that a regional housing center would be able to explain to people. And just the last thing I remembered is that the seasonal communities designation, your town has to vote to be considered. For example, my town isn't doing it. But most towns are accepting that designation. It does give you more leeway in terms of attainable housing, in terms of being able to set up overlay districts for municipal workers. Usually you have to do housing in a lottery. This you can specify municipal. So there are all sorts of things that that we can celebrate, we can share, and we can work together on. And so, thank you.
No, thank you. And I will say that Chatham did sign on for that. And indeed, at our town meeting, we're also going to decide whether or not we think fishermen should be one of the subcategories that gets, I'll just call it first dibs at housing. So Chatham is involved with that, I'm proud to say. Delegate Frederickson, what say you? You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Hello again. I'm not so sure we need to do a deep dive into housing, quite honestly. I'm not sure that any of us have the time or expertise to offer real valuable opinions. The county spent $1 million to get people to study this full time, and we have a document to look at. And I'm not sure how we're going to come up with anything that is really meaningful to do to anybody, because the towns are moving forward, just like you said, on a lot of issues that are contained in this $1 million study. I do like the idea of limiting it to the shared services position and how we can incorporate that, and perhaps, I don't think we can do it in this year's budget, but address it in next year's budget more formally. So I do like that. But again, for us to dive into this massive issue with special interests coming from every direction you can, we're going to come up with one. I don't know what we did even come up with.
No, and I like the fact that you agree with the shared services position to be explored. So it's worth having a meeting. And if you think people get into topics that you don't agree with, you could attend the meeting and say that. Or when it comes time for a vote on anything, you'll have your opportunity. So Delegate O'Malley, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm very much in agreement with Delegate Frederickson. The reality that this group is not going to come up with an answer. And I think the most significant thing we could do is have a conversation with the Cape Cod Commission, who has been doing this deep dive, who has really been putting time into it, and to say to them, what could we do? How could we facilitate? What do you need in the way of resources to help implement some of the solutions and the paths that you've identified? They're clearly taking the lead on this, and I think we should support them to the maximum extent possible.
Thank you. Dean Omen, what say you?
Well, I'm late to the dance as usual, but I agree with Deputy Speaker Gesson. Let's start small and get something done. I don't care what it is. I don't care where we have to go. Let's start with a small number. Maybe it'll start a fire, and that's what we need to do. Talk is cheap, and we've done a lot of talking. So I'd like to see us find a way to get something in the pipeline, and soon. And this committee that you're talking about might be the person that might be the one to go. I'd be happy to help out with that thing. Thank you.
Talk is cheap until you hire a lawyer. I always try to lighten it up. Anybody else? So we're going to have a committee meeting in the near future, and we'll definitely speak about the topics that we talked about today. I think this has been worthwhile because last time it was somewhat truncated. There was a press release about it that didn't have everybody's opinions. It was more like just a general consensus. However, going forward, any press releases are going to have all the different sides to the best of our ability. So I take responsibility for that. And now we will move forward in a more balanced approach to communications. And with that, we're going to go to the next topic, if no one objects. I didn't lose my... Okay, so let's see. All right, reports from offices and committees. So there's going to be 4 different chairs that are going to give their reports from recent committee meetings that we have had. I'll start with Delegate Killian, who had a telecommunications meeting. Please go ahead, Chair Killian.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Assembly Telecommunications and Energy Committee convened remotely on Monday, March 24th at 4 p.m. The committee members reviewed the fiscal year 2026 proposed operating budget for Information Technology. Director Bill Traverse answered questions from the committee members. The committee voted unanimously to favorably recommend the Information Technology budget to the Finance Committee as proposed.
Thank you, Delegate Killian. Next, we're going to go to Delegate O'Malley, who had a committee meeting on Housing and Human Services. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The Committee on Health and Human Services met with Director Joe Pacheco on March 12th. We obviously expressed our concerns about the potential loss of federal funding, which forms a very big piece of that. One of those concerns is the SHINE program, which expires this year, and our budget does include full funding from the general fund for the SHINE program. However, it is hoped that it will be that the federal funding will be continued. Programs instituted later than 2019 do not have any guarantees of continuation if funding is lost. Earlier programs, including SHINE and the home programs, do. The ARPA grant, which funded the Shared Regional Housing Services pilot program, will also expire this year, and new funding is being sought. So we're obviously operating in an environment where future funding through grants is of concern. The budget for that department is up 11% from the prior fiscal year. That is entirely salaries, wages, and fringes. There's no new staff. The committee voted 5-0 to recommend the proposed budget of roughly $564,000 under ordinance number 3. And as I say, there were no new services or staff. Although the SHINE director's second half of the fiscal year represents a new service that is included, which probably won't be needed.
Thank you, Delegate O'Malley, Chair O'Malley. Now we're going to go to the Deputy Speaker, Chair of Public Services, and then we'll end with Finance Committee from Dean Omen. So go ahead, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since my last report, the committee has met twice on March 17th and on March 26th. Over the course of those two meetings, we've heard presentations from the Dredge Enterprise Fund, the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, including AmeriCorps, the Facilities Department, which answered questions that delegates had, and we also considered the Registry of Deeds budget. At both these meetings, we unanimously voted to recommend those budgets as presented to the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Dean Omen, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee convened remotely on Monday, March 10th, and then on March 26th, and then again on March 31st. The committee has had extensive discussion with staff regarding registry and administration, finance, revenue projections, budget sustainability, and my favorite, mission creep, and the hiring of a new county staff. Committee members voted to cause a review of the Information Technology budget by the Assembly Telecommunications and Energy Committee. The Finance Committee has received recommendations from the Public Services, Health and Human Services, and Telecommunications and Energy Committee on their review of departments and agency budgets. The Finance Committee has voted to recommend to the Assembly amend Ordinance 2025-5, the Cape Cod Commission budget, by inserting funding amounts under budget categories in Section 4 and adopt the ordinance with those amendments. The Finance Committee has favorably recommended the following budgets to the full Assembly: Information Technology, Cape Cod Corporate Extension Service, AmeriCorps of Cape Cod, Facilities, Registry of Deeds, and Human Services. And we thank the subcommittees for that action that was able to let us move forward. The Finance Committee voted to postpone consideration of the following budgets until it receives more information. That would be Children's Cove. We have some additional questions. In Health and Environment, we definitely have other questions, especially with the new hires. The Finance Committee has not yet acted on the favorable recommendation by the Public Services Committee on the Dredge Enterprise budget. We'll look forward to that. Finance Committee will review the following budgets at its upcoming meeting before transmitting a full report to the Assembly by April 16th. We're going to look at the Administration and Commissioner's Office, the Human Rights Advisory Commission, the Center for Public Safety Training, the pesky Assembly of Delegates, Finance, Salary Reserve, Miscellaneous, Fringe, and Debt. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now we're going to have a discussion on the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget review. And who would like to talk about the budget as it in general? This is just an opportunity to do that, not mandatory that everybody opine, but is there anybody who would like to talk about it? So Delegate Green, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know how I'd like to put things on the record. And, but I would like to put on the record that I think we should seriously consider what just happened and not repeat it in upcoming years, as far as every single department should come before a subcommittee, and the directors of these departments should answer questions in a meeting in their two departments, the registry and the Cape Cod Commission, that did not do that. And so I think as a matter of policy, the Assembly should not do that again.
Thank you. Next, let's see. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Deputy Speaker Gessen.
Just in terms of broad discussion on the budget, as an opportunity to speak to the delegates as we're all gathered here today, and possibly to put something in the ear of the Finance Committee as they do their work. One of the, if not the biggest thing that we do as an assembly every year is consider the budget, review it, and vote to approve it or make changes as we think are fiscally prudent. And within that budget, if not the largest line item year after year, definitely the line item with the greatest impact over time is going to be staffing. Because not only are we committing the county to that year in terms of the staffing line item, but with every new hire, there is the obligation for OPEB, for retirement benefits, for fringe benefits that are going to last in perpetuity. So I think it's incredibly important that the county and the Assembly of Delegates, at the core of our responsibility looking at the budget, is to keep an eye on the staffing policies of the county and ensure our intent that we put into the budget is actually what's executed. So I'm not sure what the best way moving forward to do that is, but I know some folks have ideas in terms of codifying the staffing schedules within the budget when we approve it to ensure our intent's carried out. But I would love to bring that up as an idea and have that further discussed through the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Delegate Frizzell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my first year at the Assembly and first time as an alternate on the Finance Committee. One of the things that has struck me in reviewing budget, serving on the Finance Committee, is that we're in a time trap in a way when we get the budget and have to act on it and make several requests for information, and that takes time to get back to us. I do think it would be helpful if the Finance Committee, after the budget is approved, continue to meet and discuss some of the items that fall out of the budget that we need to keep our eyes on and seek information before we get to next October or next January. One of them is what the Deputy Speaker just mentioned. Some of these things, and there are others, I think we need to, the grants come to mind, where we sought a lot of information. We're told we can't get it yet, and they're working on it and won't have it before the budget has to be approved. So I think there's a need for the Finance Committee to continue to work on a list of items along with the administration after the budget's approved and before we get to the next budget cycle.
Yeah, and I will say that I have already spoke about that with Chair Oman. and that the topic of grants should be explored in detail during the off-season. We talked about it. I've also talked about it with a couple of other members of the Finance Committee, and they all want to do that. And obviously you do too, which is great. And so now you can have a busy summer looking at grants and whatever else you want. So careful what you ask for. I will also say that Director Senatori of the Cape Cod Commission offered to come to the Finance Committee, and they did not need her input. They felt like her budget was perfunctory, and I just want to let you know that that's why she didn't come. She offered to come. Delegate Green, what say you now?
Thank you. I did want to follow up with the grants. In there, so if there are grants that disappear, I mean, what all the work that has been done on said budget items would change. So as far as all of that's concerned, and if it changes, before May, the first week in May, let's say, that's one type of situation. But if it changes after that, it's going to be a moving target. And I mean, I don't know, perhaps the Finance Committee talks about that. I mean, what are the various scenarios? I mean, if it was a business, you would have a business plan based upon that. And I think it would behoove the Assembly to consider those scenarios. I'm sure the departments are considering it. I presume that the county administrators is considering it, but the Assembly should also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Delegate Friesel, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To respond to the delegate, we're very much aware of that. And on top of it, we've made information requests that just give us the basic information about where these grants lie in the general fund or the general budget, and what's being funded with those grants. We're told by administration that they're operating with software that can't provide that information to us right now, and they're working on software that will provide it, but it won't be provided before June in the budget. So I think we have to be patient with them and work on that once their software can produce the information that we've asked them for. And we will work on those very points you're making once we get that information.
Yeah, and I want to say too that I have found, and I've been on the Assembly, I think this might be my 4th term, not sure, but I find that staff they bend over backwards to give us the information we need. They do. And we've never asked a lot about grants before because grants is a hot topic because what's happening at the state and federal level. So we caught them a little bit off guard with that. They weren't ready to do that. And that's why we are going to have patience as an Assembly. And we're going to explore that on the off season. And then we will know a lot more about what to ask for in the future, what to do. If you look at what the Cape Cod Commission does with their grants, it's impressive. Very impressive how they handle the acceptance of grants. They don't just take anything that comes down the road, depends what the terms and conditions are. And one more thing I want to mention is when the Finance Committee does discuss grants, we should also discuss whether or not the Assembly of Delegates should have a say in the acceptance of grants because of we find ourselves in the position we're in now. So that's another topic that right now is not done. We are not consulted. They're just accepted or not. And I think we should have a say in that. Assistant Administrator Vera Harik, please. Please.
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon, everyone. Just to correct the record, we have transmitted responses to their questions regarding grants earlier this afternoon, as well as to the delegates' questions about miscellaneous and contingency budget. So, thank you.
Thank you for all you do. Let's see. I'm going to go to Elizabeth Hatter and then back to Delegate Vice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's funny when I was right before Delegate Green spoke, I was going to say that I thought this was the best budget process we've had since I've been on the Assembly. It was clear, it was concise. We had the right committees looking at the right departments. I found that every single department that was asked a question answered in a timely manner, as well as they could with the information they had. And I was thrilled the way things went this year. I think it's terrific. And I really think that, you know, as the budget process has progressed since I've been on the assembly, we have asked more and more of the staff, and they have delivered time and time again in exemplary fashion. I mean, we're really lucky to have the people at the Cape that we have. And I think that's one of the reasons sometimes we don't need directors of departments to come in, because their budget is self-explanatory. And it's like, great, good job, thanks, bye. So anyway, I just would like to put on the record that I think this year has been the best budget experience since I've been here. Thank you.
No, and I fully agree with that. And my experience on the assembly, looking back before I was on it, most assemblies essentially rubber stamp budgets and staff didn't have to do anything much. And now we're fulfilling the mandate of the charter, and staff is stepping right up. And I really appreciate that. And I agree with everything Delegate Harder just said. Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have seen the email referred to by the Assistant Administrator, which came in at 4:43. I just want to make the point that we're in a meeting when this information comes in. I can't be expected to know about it while the meeting is going on. And so I just want to make clear that had I known this was here, I would have said that what I said about the prior email. So this came in the course of our meeting. So I'm not reading emails during the course of our meeting. I'm listening to the meetings and the proceedings of the meetings. So I'd like that on the record.
Okay. Assistant Administrator Harik, how do you want to respond to that?
Thank you. Just to clarify that we're not trying to time our responses to when people are meeting, when they're not meeting. We're trying to get you the information as quickly as possible. And so that's how we're operating. I'm not suggesting that people are reading their emails during meetings, but to suggest that, that the, information won't be available until the budget is completed. I just wanted to correct the record on that. We promised that we would do our best to get the information to the assembly, and we've done so.
No, and we weren't going to use that information at today's meeting anyway, and so obviously you were trying to get it done before end of business. We appreciate that, and the administrator has already told us that we're going to have all the information we need most likely by Friday, so it's all good. Anybody else? No, very good. So we're going to stop that discussion, and now we're going to move, the assembly convenes now. Oh, yep.
Since we've changed the way we do the agenda, my report's also here because.
Yes, so now we're going to have a report from the clerk before the assembly convenes.
Don't worry, it's mercifully short, which is please continue as you always do to respond to me as I try to schedule the next set of committee meetings and bring the finance committee's part of the budget to a close. If you need anything from me, I'm available, but we've got a lot of meetings left before we get to the end of the budget. And so at least two.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. I was just disagreeing that it was a lot. Is 1 to 2. The assembly convenes now. I think that's just another word for we closed the public hearing. That's what we do. And so when the assembly convenes, we don't talk to people that are not on the assembly unless we break the rule. Okay, so the assembly convenes. Now, orders of the day. Letters to the governor and general court requesting certain funding for Cape-based projects through the environmental bond bill. Deputy Speaker, could you make a motion?
I move consideration of authorizing a letter to this, of authorizing the speaker to coordinate with the administration and the board to draft a letter to the governor and the general court requesting certain funding for Cape-based projects through the environmental bond bill.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, then we are going to vote to authorize this letter. Delegate Harder? Yes.
My only point of discussion is that I thought, they're both great letters, both the one that the administrator wrote and the one that we were shown by Association of Preserve Cape Cod. And I think that if we could perchance ask the county administrator and the commissioners to just add one line to the letter he presented about how we stand in support of Cape organizations, including Association of Preserve Cape Cod or something like that. I mean, it may not work, but
Why can't we just endorse sending both? Is there a reason? Am I missing something?
no,
I think we should send both, power and numbers.
okay, great.
Okay,
Better.
so we'll do one at a time. So right now, we're discussing the one that we would do jointly with the board. Does anybody, yes, Delegate Gallagher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The editor in me is kicking in. I haven't been able to read it all yet, but right in the first line, it says we are writing on behalf of, but the Assembly and the Commissioners are signing this. So we are writing as, not on behalf of.
I would love to work with the speaker and anybody who wants to on the grammar or editing the letter. That's why we're not putting the letter directly in front of you to vote on. So we'll work on that.
Okay.
Okay, I majored in journalism, so I have an amount of skill.
I'm sure you would.
Yes. Oh, yes, I definitely. Let's see, Delegate Green, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think you all have the letters in front of you. All I have is the letter from the APCC, which was just specifically speaking about the water protection. I take it that from Mr. Dutton's remarks that also the freshwater initiative funding is also included. Is there anything else included in the joint letter?
We'll make sure you get the draft. And we got it during the meeting and we'll make sure you have it too.
Is there anything else, any other topics included besides the freshwater initiative and the wastewater?
I'm gonna let the answer that.
So I reached out to the administrator earlier to get the letter and a lot of traffic right now on email. Either I didn't see it or he thought he sent it and didn't send it. The fact of the matter is we passed it out in the room during the meeting and I did try to forward it along to both you and Delegate Frederickson. So that's why it's not, we're voting on a letter tonight. It's authorizing us to work with the administration and the board to come up with the letter. And if the speaker is fine with that, I will make sure you see it before we send it out.
Yeah. So we're not voting on a letter. We're voting to authorize the clerk and the speaker to work together to facilitate a joint letter.
A joint letter about those two specific topics. Is that correct? Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
I'm going to let the clerk answer that again.
The topic that's on the agenda. I don't mean to be like, I don't want to say that, I don't want to list all of the topics and say, because I haven't had a chance to fully fully read the letter that the administrator has drafted. However, I know that, and I did provide the YouTube link, that Town Manager Mark Ells and Association of Preserve Cape Cod Director Andrew Gottlieb and Cape Cod Commission Director Senatori were in front of the board at their last meeting. They gave a lengthy presentation, had a long talks, about 20 minutes, and there's a letter from the APCC that I provided, and also the letter that we just got, which I think might be in your email, whether county or personal. And so, okay, we'll make sure.
The topic is letter to the governor and general court requesting certain funding for Cape-based projects through the environmental bond bill. So we're going to vote on whether to authorize that. If there's no further discussion, we're just going to go to Michaela Wyman Colombo. Please go ahead.
if I missed it because I was in and out, I apologize, but I don't think we have a second.
Oh, we had a second. You must have been
You
out
did.
at that moment. We do.
I-
Yes.
I could well have been. I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker.
It was my motion earlier, and I like to be specific in my motion, so I'd love to make a motion to vote on authorizing the speaker to work with the Board of Commissioners to draft a letter that asks that the governor rescind the proposed changes to the 2025 IUP draft regulations, and that $500 million is allocated from the environmental bond bill to assist the SRF in meeting future demand for financing of critical environmental infrastructure projects statewide.
Second.
Okay, we have that motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller. Yes. Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Protash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Palumbo. Madam Speaker, that motion passes with 14 delegates representing 91.077% of the population
Thank
voting in
you.
favor.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So that takes care of the letters as a general rule, looks like. Next, new business. Is there any? Nope. Announcements. Are there any? Okay. Adjournment. Is there that?
Madam Speaker, I move that we adjourn. Second.
Roll call vote.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo. Madam Speaker, that
Yes.
motion passes
Okay.
1491.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and for your committee meeting times, and good night, Cape Cod.